So welcome to Module 1 of the Right Track training webinar. So let's look at the history of disability, or how people have cared for people with disability. Years ago, it was like this circle. Everybody was in the circle except for people who had disabilities, and they were outside of that circle, and that's called exclusion. So what's the next thing that happened? Well, then the circle was still there with everybody else in it, but we decided to put everybody in a circle of their own so we could care for their needs. But we're still outside the circle, not included. So what do we call this? Being separate in an institution, because we can care for your needs a lot better if you're just in the one place. And then the next development in the history of disability was we better put that separate circle inside the other circle so we're all together. Isn't that better? And so that's what we call integrated, but we're still separate. So what we really want is everybody in the one circle, and that's called social inclusion, equality of choice and quality of outcomes. So most of us would probably know a little bit about disability and diversity, but have a look at this slide here. Just imagine if this is your family at a football match. Great place to be. And everybody has the same box to stand on to look over the fence. Is that right? Well, everyone has the equally the same supports. It's called equality. But you notice that somebody's missing out, and that's the person who's a little bit smaller. They've got the same supports, but they can't see the same thing as everybody else. So now the person who can't see can see because they have more support, because that's what that person needs. Well, that should be okay, shouldn't it? That's called equity. What about if we did something different? What about changing the fence? That would make sense too, wouldn't it? The barrier is the same then for everybody. And look, they don't even need any special supports. They don't have to stand on a box. The barrier is the same for everybody. Well, some people call that justice. But then again, if we remove the fence completely, how different does that look? Nobody needs any special supports at this stage. Everybody can enjoy the football match. There are no barriers. Let's remove the barrier altogether. So now, how do you think you and your family will feel now? There is no fence whatsoever, and that's what we're aiming for. Remove the barrier, and in this case it was a fence. In other cases it might be something else. Have a look at this slide. Here we have a gentleman who only has the use of one leg. Well, that's going to impact on the way that he gets around to do everyday things, isn't it? He can get supports and services and assistance. Here you have a skateboard, a prosthetic leg, a wheelchair, and this will help him, or anybody like him, to do everyday things. But then what happens when the community doesn't help? It's all right having a wheelchair, but what if there's no way of you getting around the community? We need to remove this barrier as well. So the lady in the wheelchair has been stopped or is disabled when it comes to going up the steps. But what if we did something like this? So isn't this a much better way of getting into a building for everybody? What if you were going to somewhere like the theatre or an awards show maybe for somebody who had a disability and they rocked up to this venue? No problem getting in. You can all go together. Everybody is included. There is no barrier.